A businessman checks into a luxury hotel in Dubai. He orders room service. Makes a few phone calls, arranges meetings for the next morning. Nothing about him suggests danger. Nothing hints at violence. He is careful, methodical, a man who has survived decades in the shadows by trusting no one and assuming everyone is watching. But what he doesn't know is that the illusion surrounding him has been years in the making. That the hotel staff he speaks to, the businessmen he meets, even the city he walks through, have been transformed into an elaborate stage, and in 18 hours he will be dead. This is the story of how Mossad spent years constructing the perfect trap. How they created an illusion so complete that their target walked willingly into his own execution. And how patience, not speed, became the deadliest weapon in modern espionage. Before we dive into this incredible operation, I need to ask you something. If you're fascinated by the hidden world of intelligence operations, if you want to discover more stories like this that no one else is telling, hit that subscribe button right now. It's not just a click, it's how you support this kind of deep investigative content that takes months to research. Turn on notifications because what's coming after this video is even more shocking. And let me know in the comments, what country are you watching from? Now let's uncover how Mossad turned an entire city into a stage. The target's name was Mahmoud al-Mabhouh, and by 2010 he had become one of Hamas's most valuable assets. Not because he fired rockets or planned suicide bombings, but because he did something far more important. He kept the weapons flowing. Born in Gaza's Jabalia refugee camp in 1960, al-Mabhouh had spent 40 years building the invisible networks that sustained Hamas operations. He was the logistics genius, the silent engineer who ensured that Iranian missiles reached Gaza through Sudan, Egypt, and the labyrinth of tunnels beneath Rafah. Israeli intelligence had been tracking him since 1989, when he personally participated in the kidnapping and murder of 2 Israeli soldiers. One of them, 21-year-old Avi Sasportas, was grabbed at a hitchhiking stop, shot 3 times, and buried in a pre-dug grave. The second, Ilan Sadon, was lured into a car by men dressed as Orthodox Jews and killed with a Beretta pistol. Al-Mabhouh had posed for photographs with both bodies before disposal. For these crimes, for his role in arming Hamas, and for his position as the critical bridge between Tehran and Gaza, al-Mabhouh carried what Mossad called a red page, an open authorization for elimination with no expiration date. But killing al-Mabhouh wasn't simple. He understood that he was hunted. He moved constantly, used multiple identities, traveled with bodyguards, avoided patterns. For 2 decades, Mossad tracked him without finding the perfect opportunity. Every potential operation carried too much risk, too much exposure, too high a chance of failure. They had learned from past mistakes, particularly the disaster of Lillehammer in 1973, when agents had killed an innocent man in Norway, exposing their methods and destroying their reputation for infallibility. So instead of rushing, they waited. And while they waited, they built something extraordinary, a complete operational infrastructure that could be activated when the moment finally arrived. This infrastructure wasn't just about weapons and safe houses. It was about creating illusions, establishing legends, building cover identities so deep and so convincing that al-Mabhouh would never suspect the trap closing around him. The first layer of the illusion was the Sionim network. Sion, Hebrew for helper, refers to Jewish civilians living outside Israel who provide logistical support to Mossad operations. They don't know operational details. They don't participate in violence. They simply help, renting apartments, providing cars, establishing business covers, creating paper trails that make false identities seem real. Over years, Mossad had cultivated a network of Sionim across Europe and the Middle East. These weren't spies in any traditional sense. They were doctors, lawyers, business people who believed they were helping protect Israel and who asked no questions when assistance was requested. In cities across Europe, apartments were rented under the names of shell companies. Bank accounts were opened. Credit histories were established. These weren't resources for immediate use. They were investments, pieces of infrastructure that might sit dormant for years until the moment they were needed. When that moment came, operatives could arrive in a city and have instant access to safe houses, vehicles, communications equipment, all with documentation that would withstand casual scrutiny. The second layer was the legend building. A legend in intelligence terminology is a complete false identity. It's not just a fake passport, it's an entire life history: childhood, education, employment, travel records, credit history, social media presence. Creating a convincing legend takes years. You can't simply forge a passport and call yourself a businessman. You need documentation proving you've been that businessman for years. You need colleagues who will vouch for you, a professional history that checks out, a digital footprint that makes sense. Mossad invested enormous resources in building these legends. They identified real people, dual nationals living in Israel, and carefully appropriated their identities. Not by stealing documents, but by creating parallel versions of those identities that could be used operationally. When the Dubai operation was later exposed, investigators discovered that many of the false passports used belonged to real people who had no idea their identities had been compromised. These weren't random forgeries. They were carefully selected individuals whose profiles matched operational requirements. The third layer was surveillance architecture. For years, Mossad tracked al-Mabhough's movements, building a comprehensive picture of his life. Where did he travel? Who did he meet? What hotels did he prefer? What security measures did he employ? This wasn't passive observation. It was active intelligence gathering that required operatives to get close, sometimes very close, to their target without revealing themselves. They learned that al-Mabhough traveled frequently to Damascus, where Hamas leaders operated under Syrian protection. They learned his preference for certain airlines, certain routes. They discovered his habit of traveling without bodyguards when speed and secrecy were more important than security. And they learned something crucial. He trusted certain channels of communication that he believed were secure but that Israeli intelligence had penetrated. This surveillance revealed a pattern. When al-Mabhough needed to coordinate large weapons shipments, he traveled personally to meet with Iranian Revolutionary Guard contacts. These meetings typically occurred in third countries, neutral territory where both parties felt relatively safe. The challenge for Mossad was predicting when and where these meetings would occur. Al-Mabhough varied his patterns deliberately, never using the same route twice, never establishing predictable schedules. But intelligence work is about patience and probability. If you watch someone long enough, patterns emerge even in apparent randomness. Mossad analysts identified a window in January 2010 when al-Mabhough would likely need to travel for coordination meetings. The weapons pipeline from Iran through Sudan had been disrupted by Israeli airstrikes. New routes needed to be established, money needed to be moved. And for these negotiations, al-Mabhough would need to be present personally. The prediction proved correct. In early January 2010, intercepted communications suggested al-Mabhough was planning travel. Mossad's human intelligence sources, agents embedded within Palestinian organizations, confirmed that a meeting was being arranged. The location was Dubai, a city that offered advantages for both sides: modern infrastructure, easy connections to both Iran and the Arab world, and a government that maintained pragmatic relations with all parties. For Mossad, Dubai presented both opportunity and challenge. The opportunity was that Dubai, despite its wealth and modernity, was not particularly vigilant about intelligence operations on its soil. Unlike European capitals with experienced counterintelligence services, Dubai's security apparatus was focused primarily on conventional crime and terrorism, not sophisticated state-sponsored operations. The challenge was Dubai's extensive surveillance camera network. The city had invested heavily in CCTV coverage, with cameras in airports, hotels, shopping malls, and major streets. Any operation would be recorded. Mossad's planners made a calculated decision. Speed mattered more than invisibility. They would move fast, execute precisely, and disappear before Dubai authorities realized what had happened. By the time investigators began reviewing footage, the operatives would be out of the country, beyond reach. The risk of camera exposure was acceptable if the execution was swift enough. The first operatives arrived in Dubai on January 18, 2010, the day before al-Mabhough. Airport cameras captured two men traveling under European passports. They moved through immigration without incident, collected their luggage, and took taxis to separate hotels. By noon, two more had landed from Paris. By evening, the advance team was complete, 11 operatives positioned across Dubai. each with specific roles, each maintaining cover as tourists or businessmen. These operatives represented years of training and preparation. They came from Mossad's Caesarea unit, the division specializing in assassinations abroad. Caesarea recruits from Israel's most elite military units, Sayeret Matkal and Shaytet 13, special forces operators trained in close quarters combat, surveillance, and deep infiltration. After recruitment, they undergo years of additional training in civilian environments, how to blend into crowds, how to maintain cover under stress, how to kill silently and efficiently. But Caesarea operatives aren't just killers. They're actors, psychologists, improvisers. They learn to read people, to detect surveillance, to sense when something is wrong. They study languages, cultures, social norms. They practice being invisible not through dramatic disguises, but through aggressive normality. The goal is to be so unremarkable that witnesses forget them immediately. The team in Dubai had been selected specifically for this operation. Their profiles matched the cover identities, European tourists and business people whose presence in Dubai would seem natural. They spoke multiple languages. They understood the rhythms of international travel. And they had trained together, rehearsing the operation in facilities that replicated Dubai's hotels and streets. On January 19th, Al-Mabou's flight landed at Dubai International Airport at 3:15 p.m. He collected his single carry-on bag and moved through customs with practiced ease. His passport listed him as a merchant. The immigration officer stamped it without questions. What he couldn't see were the eyes already tracking him. At gate 17, a woman in sunglasses watched him pass. Near baggage claim, a man pretending to read a newspaper noted the time. In the packing structure, another operative transmitted a brief encrypted message. Target has arrived. Omabhau took a taxi to the Al Bustan Rotana Hotel. He checked in, requesting a room without balcony, windows sealed, only one entrance. This was standard security practice for someone aware of threats. The hotel staff accommodated without question, assigning room 230 on the second floor. Before going upstairs, Al-Mabhau deposited cash and documents in the hotel safe. Then he rode the elevator up, flanked by two men dressed in tennis outfits carrying rackets. They stood close enough to note his floor, his room number, the exact location of his door. These two men, later identified by their distinctive clothing, spent the next hour pacing the second-floor corridor. One stood near the elevator making calls. The other walked back and forth, observing who entered and exited rooms. They were mapping the terrain, confirming guard schedules, identifying the room directly across from Al-Mabou's, room 237. At 3:47 p.m., a woman named Gail Folliard arrived at the Fairmont Hotel several miles away. Investigators believe this was where the final briefing occurred. The assassination squad gathered, reviewed the plan one last time, synchronized watches, confirmed contingencies. By 4:14 p.m., one operative had left the Fairmont driving toward the Rotana. 2 minutes later, another followed. The machinery was in motion. Peter Elvinger, believed to be the field commander, booked room 237 from a business lounge. He made 2 phone calls, one arranging the room, the other booking his own flight out of Dubai via Doha to Zurich. Then he went to the Rotana, checked in formally, obtained the electronic key card, and handed it to another operative in the lobby. He placed a suitcase beside this operative and walked out of the hotel. By 4:40 p.m., Elvinger was en route to the airport. He would board a 7:30 p.m. flight and be gone before the operation concluded. Room 237 now became the command post. Over the next hour, operatives entered one by one. Security footage captured them arriving with various bags and equipment. The room now held the operational core, coordinators and the 4-man hit squad designated to enter Al-Mabou's room. Al-Mabhau left the hotel briefly at 4:23 p.m. for reasons never fully clarified. Some reports suggest he met with contacts at a nearby mall. Others claim he was simply confirming his security. What is certain is that he returned at 8:24 p.m., walked past operatives positioned in the corridor, and entered his room. His key worked normally. The door showed no signs of tampering. He had no reason to believe anything was wrong. What happened next demonstrated years of operational planning and technical sophistication. At exactly 8 p.m., the hit squad attempted to access his room. The hotel's electronic lock system logged a failed reprogramming attempt. They were trying to hack the door, recoding it to grant access without disabling Al-Mabou's own key. The technology was sophisticated, likely rehearsed on similar locks during training, but at that moment, a hotel guest exited the elevator. One operative intercepted him, engaging in conversation while the team either stepped back or slipped inside undetected. The surveillance cameras, positioned at angles that didn't directly face the door, couldn't capture the precise method of entry. Inside room 230, the execution was brutal and efficient. Al-Mabou was first immobilized with succinylmethonium chloride, a fast-acting muscle relaxant injected into his right hip. The drug induces paralysis within 60 seconds while leaving the victim conscious. Unable to move, unable to scream, fully aware of what's happening, higher doses shut down respiratory function, leading to death by asphyxiation. The team also used a stun gun. Burn marks were later found on Al-Mabou's chest, behind his ear, and on his inner thigh. The shocks were likely intended to simulate cardiac arrest, making the death appear natural. But the final method was suffocation. A pillow stained with his blood was discovered. He bled from the nose as he struggled. Broken bed slats beneath the mattress and damage to the headboard indicated violent resistance. Mahmoud Al-Mabou, the man called the Fox for his ability to sense danger, fought his killers in silence while operatives stood guard outside, ensuring no one interrupted. The entire execution took 20 minutes. By 8:46 p.m., the first members of the hit squad exited the hotel carrying a large duffel bag believed to contain the murder instrument. All four rode the elevator together, but exited separately to avoid drawing attention. The scene was arranged to appear like natural death. The door was chained from inside. A medicine bottle was staged on the nightstand. Al-Mabou lay on his bed as if he had simply gone to sleep and never woken up. The operatives had been trained to make violent death look peaceful, to transform murder into apparent misfortune. Within 12 hours, the entire team had dispersed across Europe, Africa, and Asia using forged passports and stolen identities. They caught flights to different destinations, traveling in pairs or alone, mixing into the crowds of international travelers that flow through Dubai daily. By the time Al-Mabou's body was discovered, every operative was beyond the reach of Dubai police. Al-Mabou's wife tried calling him that night. The phone rang unanswered. Hamas headquarters in Damascus grew concerned when he failed to report in. On January 20th, at approximately 1:30 p.m., a hotel maid discovered his body when he missed checkout. What they found was a man lying peacefully in bed. No visible wounds, no signs of struggle beyond the broken bed frame hidden beneath the mattress. Initial reports leaned toward natural causes. Sudden hypertension triggering brain failure, an overdose, cardiac arrest. Only after Dr. Fawzi Ben Mhiran performed the autopsy did the pieces begin falling into place. The injection site, the electrical burns, the traces of succinylmethonium chloride still detectable in his tissues, the blood on the pillow, the bruising on his nose, neck, and head. Dubai police didn't initially know who the victim was. When Hamas finally disclosed his identity to Lieutenant General Dahi Khalfan Tamim, the police chief exploded in fury. His anger wasn't just about the violation of Emirati sovereignty. It was personal. His office was located minutes from the Rotana. The assassination had occurred practically under his nose. Tamim ordered his investigators to pull every frame of security footage from airports, hotels, malls, and streets. What emerged was astonishing. 648 hours of video documenting 27 suspects moving through Dubai like ghosts. The footage showed operatives changing disguises in restrooms, making calls through encrypted phones, trailing Al-Mabou through lobbies and corridors, coordinating movements with military precision. On February 15th, Dubai police held a press conference and released edited video seeking public assistance. The footage went viral. News agencies worldwide broadcast images of the tennis players, the woman in sunglasses, the men with baseball caps. Intelligence analysts studied the video frame by frame, marveling at the operation's audacity and its exposure. The scandal centered on the passports. 11 suspects had used meticulously forged documents based on stolen identities from real citizens living in Israel. 6 British passports, 3 Irish, 1 French, 1 German. The passport holders were genuine people, dual nationals, Holocaust survivors' descendants. Ordinary citizens who had no knowledge their identities had been compromised. Britain expelled a senior Israeli diplomat believed to be Mossad's local coordinator. Condemnations echoed across Europe. Yet those familiar with intelligence operations recognized the gestures as largely symbolic. The evidence was circumstantial. No one had been caught. And the victim was a senior member of a group officially designated as a terrorist organization by most Western nations. But the exposure revealed something Mossad had worked years to keep hidden: their operational methods, their technical capabilities, their willingness to use forged documents from friendly nations. The perfect illusion they had built, the carefully constructed infrastructure of false identities and cover legends, was now laid bare for the world to see. The irony was profound. The operation itself was a technical success. Al-Mapa was eliminated. The hit squad escaped without capture. The execution was clean and professional. But the strategic failure was total. The exposure of methods, the diplomatic fallout, the damage to relations with allies, all outweighed the tactical achievement of eliminating one target. This was the paradox at the heart of the Dubai operation. Mossad had spent years building the perfect trap, had executed the mission with precision, and had achieved their objective. But in doing so, they revealed the very infrastructure they had worked so hard to keep secret. The illusion was perfect until it succeeded, and in succeeding it destroyed itself. The aftermath continued for years. Interpol added 11 suspects to its most wanted list. Dubai police revealed that airport staff had conducted retinal scans on the same individuals upon entry. Investigators discovered DNA from 4 operatives and fingerprints from several others. The biometric data was entered into international databases. Yet no arrests followed. The operatives had vanished into the networks that created them, likely reassigned temporarily, then redeployed to new missions under new identities. For Hamas, al-Mabou's death was a significant blow, but not a crippling one. New figures rose to fill his absence. Iran found new intermediaries. The weapons continued flowing, though through different channels. The cycle of violence continued, each death feeding the next round of retaliation. What made this operation historically significant wasn't just the assassination itself, but what it revealed about modern intelligence warfare. It showed that with enough resources, planning, and willingness to accept diplomatic consequences, a state can eliminate its enemies almost anywhere. But it also revealed that in an age of ubiquitous surveillance and digital forensics, true invisibility is no longer possible. The perfect illusion that Mossad had spent years building was exposed in days. The operational infrastructure, the false identities, the methods and techniques all became public knowledge. Future operations would be harder. Adversaries now knew what to look for. Allied intelligence services were more cautious about cooperation, and the myth of Mossad's ghost-like invisibility was shattered. In the end, the Dubai operation became a case study in the trade-offs of modern espionage. You can build the perfect trap. You can wait years for the right moment. You can execute with precision and achieve your objective. But in a world of cameras, databases, and instant global communication, the price of success may be the exposure of everything you work to keep secret. The hotel cameras stopped recording. The operatives vanished. Al-Mabou's body was returned to Damascus and buried. Dubai police closed the case without arrests. Mossad added another file to its classified archives. And somewhere in Tel Aviv, planners began studying the mistakes, refining methods, preparing for the next operation, knowing that the perfect illusion must now be rebuilt from scratch, because the old one had been exposed for the world to see. If you found this investigation into the hidden world of intelligence operations fascinating, make sure to hit that like button and share this video. And here's the question I want you to debate in the comments. In an age of total surveillance, is it still possible to conduct covert operations without exposure? Or has technology made traditional espionage obsolete? Let me know your thoughts below. And remember to subscribe, because the next investigation explores an even more controversial operation where the line between security and assassination becomes impossible to define. See you in the next video.